So we will forego that and we will move directly into our program then. So today we will have the District 17 legislators. Sidney Davis is here. Chris Caston's here. Is Bill here? Do I see Bill? Okay. So we will have 2 of our 3 District 17 legislators here today. Let's give them a round of applause as they come forward. Before we get started, Kevin O'Kelly just reminded me that it is South Feeding Vermillion Week, so if you have the envelopes on your tables, put a couple dollars in there. I would say, are we supposed to use these? Are they on?
Probably a good idea.
Hello?
Right.
Representative Shorma takes a vacation with his family after New Year's and before the legislative session, and that's where he's at. So he's with his family, and I think they're in Hawaii, and I think that's where they generally go. So you get Senator Davis and I. And I'll let you start.
Yeah, thanks everybody for the invitation. You guys have always been great about inviting us to come and visit with you all, and we appreciate the opportunity and appreciate your questions. For those that don't know me, I'm Sidney Davis. Work here in town. I'm a nurse anesthetist providing anesthesia services to the community. My family and we live north of Vermillion on a farm. That's what my husband does full time. We have 3 young kids. I grew up in the Mitchell area, and my job in healthcare brought me to the southeast corner, and we've stayed ever since. And so I've been had the privilege of serving this area. I was first elected in 2021, and I really enjoy serving the public. This has been a great experience to learn more about my community, but not only work to make our community a great place to live and be, and hopefully, for me, particularly raise a family. So thank you for the opportunity today.
Yeah, thank you. It's always great to be with people live and in person. We get a lot of email correspondence, phone calls, texts, and things like that. It's always nice to see people face to face. Senator Davis and I have been doing a couple in-person things throughout the district over the last week. We were in North Sioux last night, Elk Point today, and then we'll be at the Vermillion Chamber. If you want to stomach listening to us for another day, we'll be there tomorrow from 7:30 to 9 hosting a coffee. So it's a good opportunity to meet people ahead of session and understand what their concerns are going into the legislative session. So again, appreciate the opportunity to be here, and it's always good because both Sidney and I are fellow Rotarians, and so it's good to be in front of this group. I think I know most everybody in the room. I'm Representative Chris Caston. I live right here in Vermillion on the west side of town. My wife, Katie, is a physician's assistant by trade and teaches in the PA program here at USD. We have 2 kids. Our daughter Collins is 11, turns 12 in February, and our son Kellen is 9. And I am the coach of his 3rd grade basketball team, which we are off and running, and kind of took our lumps early, but the team is developing, Ted. Test took us a little bit, and I mean, if they had a coach that knew anything, we'd be doing a lot better. But anyway, this will be my 4th term, or 4th session, 2nd term in the legislature, and I serve on the Appropriations Committee, which I think most of you know, and that's the Budget Setting Committee, which has a different charge than the policy committees that Senator Davis serves on, and I think this will be a very interesting year for the Appropriations Committee, as several of the proposals coming before us have to do with basically some way of changing our appropriations and our policies regarding how we deal with property taxes. So it'll be an interesting year in the Appropriations Committee, and that's kind of going to be my focus for the session. So I think at this point, maybe we'll open up for questions or kind of give an overview of the session.
Did we have an official program or questions prepared or anything like that? No? Okay.
You want to give overview of the session for a little bit?
Sure. I guess I didn't get a chance to just mention, I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee. I also serve on the Ag and Natural Resources Committee, and then also Senate Taxation. So those are committees where I feel like I get to lend some of my lived experiences in healthcare and agriculture. And then I've learned a lot sitting on the tax committee, especially about property taxes. I will still not claim to be an expert, but last year, the majority of our property tax bills did go through the Senate Tax Committee, and so we did hear a lot of testimony. And there was a summer study this year that has 19 proposals coming out of it, and so I anticipate that we will see a good chunk of them come through Senate Tax Committee as well. That being said, we know there's been a lot of discussion about property taxes statewide, and we anticipate that to continue on the state level. Something that I'm interested to see and hear more about. South Dakota has been awarded some quite a bit of money from the federal government for the Rural Transformation Health Fund, or Rural Transformation Health dollars, and that money is intended to go to programming. It's a 5-year grant period, a lot of strings attached, a lot of stipulations in place with the goal of creating sustainable programming for rural healthcare systems, healthcare states, because rural states, we have a unique challenge when it comes to healthcare. You can't necessarily go get a better business model in the middle of western South Dakota. There's just limited people that live out there, but yet someone needs to be out there. And so we have some unique challenges in a rural state like ours, and so I look forward to that discussion. South Dakota needs to, or the legislature needs to authorize the spending of those grant dollars, and so looking forward to chatting about that more. I think we'll be hearing that very early on in session. So,
yeah, I would just add a couple things. The governor presented his budget at the budget address the first week in December, and did let the state know that it is going to be a very tight budget year, 50-something million dollars of new ongoing revenue, of which all of it is in basically through mandatory spending, whether it's through some enhances in FMAP or some other things having to do with SNAP. So very little wiggle room when it comes to the ongoing budget. There is going to be some one-time dollars available. The governor recommended a larger percentage than what's generally put into our state reserves. So depending how that is contemplated by the legislature, will determine how much one-time dollars there could be more if I believe he recommended 12 or 12.5% be put into budget reserves instead of the customary 10%. So there could be some potential more one-time dollars available. I would say it might be the last year that we have a significant amount of one-time dollars available. Last year, I led the charge on creating the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund. So as you've seen over maybe the last 5 years, there has been substantial budget reserves or substantial surpluses each year. A lot of that is attributed to unclaimed property. Just to give you an example, I think our unclaimed property receipts last year were $332 million. We budget for $68 million plus about $40 million to pay out claims, because unclaimed property is the great unknown of state government, and we could sit here for an hour and talk about it, but it's other people's money, and it's other people's bank accounts that become dormant, and you can claim that at any time. About 20% of that will never be claimed. There is no name on it, but the other 80% could be claimed, and you can get on the unclaimed property website and see if you have some unclaimed property. I, in fact, do. It's just, this is kind of aside, but I think it is kind of a cumbersome process to get your money back. I think we can make it a little easier, and hopefully that gets more automated in the future, but again, that's an aside. Also, what will kind of contribute to a lessening of one-time dollars in the future is our Medicaid expansion projections are getting much better. When the residents of South Dakota voted for Medicaid expansion to be implemented, there was nobody knew how this was going to look. There is a general curve that goes with Medicaid expansion. You just don't know how that's going to look and what year that's going to start. And our curve, when we started to normalize, actually happened faster than maybe other states have seen. So we're getting much better. The first couple of years we were significantly off in the utilization of Medicaid expansion. We're getting much better, and so you're not going to see a large amount of reversions for what was put into the the budget for that agency going back, because we are getting better at projection. So I say all that to say, as we move forward, if we are accustomed to utilizing one-time dollars for projects, I would say there's probably not going to be a lot of those dollars available in future years for those two reasons.
Very good. Take a couple questions.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Really, my question is following up on comments particularly that you shared about property taxes. I'm a county commissioner, so part of this is coming from that role. That's our primary revenue stream. We also manage the offices that have to do a lot of the nitty-gritty. So sometimes some of the policies could create a lot of additional work for, say, our assessor's office, or might have some really difficult ways to figure out how our local government is going to work with them. So my question is, you mentioned that there's 19 proposals already out there, and I just wanted to hear from each of you whether there are any of those that you think are most feasible, most desirable, best ways to approach this, or if there's other ones, or just where your thinking are on those 19 proposals, or any others that might be in your mind right now. I just want to get that.
Yeah, I know you're asking me to speak to any specific ones. Broadly speaking, I think it's important for us to look at this issue holistically and comprehensively. We know that we need some sort of revenue to take care of our roads and bridges. We like police officers. We like EMS to show up when we call 911. We like the fire station to be ready when we need them to show up. And we have a constitutional obligation to provide education as well, K through 12. And so we need to, for me, when I look at property tax relief and how are we going to accomplish it, I think we need to make sure that we're doing it responsibly in a way that we aren't going to bankrupt our essential services that we as citizens need and depend on. We need to responsibly make sure that we're finding an alternative way to fund those things, because they are essential services that we need. And so that's why this has been a topic that the legislature is continuously researched. I think we're on our third or fourth year in a row of summer studies on property tax solutions and ideas. And I've noticed a lot of the proposals kind of nibble at the edge, maybe try to tweak relief programs and try to take a targeted approach to maybe expanding low income, for low income people, maybe playing with the amount or what their income is, so maybe more people qualify for that relief. And so, those are all really helpful things to look at. Does it provide the comprehensive, widespread relief that some are looking for? Not necessarily, but it's I'm not trying to dodge your question. It's a challenging topic, because when we look to maybe look at the evaluations of ag land, or we look at the evaluations of commercial property to try to give owner occupied some relief, once you push down on the other, it's like a teeter-totter, and it shifts the burden onto somebody else. And so that's what makes this really challenging to try to find solutions, and why we're still looking for them.
I agree with all of that.
Good.
We'll listen.
Mike has got a microphone, so when we have a question from the group here, if you would wait for him to be able to get that microphone to you. We're videoing the video every week, so in order to have that
Sure.
that question post. So.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I think I agree with Sydney. I mean, I think you're going to see a whole host of proposals. There's a group of folks that think you can cut your way to property tax relief, whether it's cutting at the county level, the city level, the school district level, or the state level. That's the answer. There's some folks that think maybe perhaps an increase in the sales tax, or difference in reduction or eliminate some of the exemptions that we have, or a combination of all of that together. So I don't know what we're going to look like. I will say that, you know, as I've sent out surveys and I've sent out communications to individuals, and communications have been sent back to me, I will say property tax is the #1 issue that you hear. Now, interestingly, #2 is funding for schools, right? So it's kind of a, and sometimes they're the same note, right? They'd like property tax relief, but you want to have additional funding for schools. So to the senator's point, it's a balance, and it's very difficult, and it is why, you know, this is hard, really hard to do, because what I would like to see, and I think where I judge these proposals, aside from the shifting that she talked about, which we kind of want to try and avoid if at all possible, and if we shift, we need to do it responsibly. We need to have responsible property tax relief where it is funded. Like, we're not just sending an unfunded mandate to the county, or sending an unfunded mandate, or we're cutting irresponsibly. And then it needs to be meaningful. You know, I think what the citizens are asking of us is meaningful tax relief, and not, you know, not a $100 tax refund when their property taxes are $6,000 or $5,000, but meaningful tax relief that they're able to actually feel and realize. So that's kind of the criteria as I look at the different proposals. And again, I think when you start talking about cutting and doing those kinds of things, as several of the legislators, and that's going to have to be done through the appropriations process and through the general bill, because you're going to change the budgets of the different agencies and things like that. So it's going to be a busy time in judging all of those things. But, you know, besides the 19 she talked about, I've already heard of 5 or 6 more proposals, and we aren't even to session yet. So, I mean, it's going to be a weighty topic, and I would suspect probably the #1 issue that's discussed the most.
So when I was in graduate school and took the class on public budgeting, the professor would always talk about the problem. Oh, I'm sorry. Speak up. You can't hear it?
I don't think it's on. Here, you can speak in this one. You can speak in this one.
Okay. Is that better? Okay. Yeah. So the graduate school budgeting teacher I had would talk about budgeting in terms of shift and shaft. You know, whenever you shift budget, somebody else has to pay the freight. And I think that's really been kind of the theme of what we're talking about. And at some point, for most states, all but 7 states, eventually they've decided that an income tax was the only fair way to do it. And so I'm you know, just stepping back from the whole problem, there's got to be some kind of comprehensive solution. And I guess my questions are, has the legislature been discussing that, comprehensive solutions? And if so, what, in your estimation, are the comprehensive solutions that don't wind up just shifting the burden elsewhere?
That's a good question. Well, I would say there's pretty much no appetite for an income tax in the legislature. When you talk about comprehensive solutions, I think big picture and it's not a solution that happens today or tomorrow or maybe even next year, but I would say folks talk a lot about expanding and growing the tax base. So that means looking for industry to move in, manufacturing, expanding jobs, you know, things like that, right? So when you grow the tax base, then you can spread that tax burden amongst more people. And I would say that's probably what I've heard some of my colleagues talk about the most as far as a comprehensive solution, but that looks different to everybody. And some people don't necessarily want or think that the government should be playing a role in that. And so that's where there's a lot of division and disagreement, and for a comprehensive solution to come together, you have to have people working cohesively together too. And that is always a challenge in peer. So I know that's not a very detailed answer, but I appreciate the question.
Dr. Smith, I think it's a fair criticism of the legislature as a whole, and I think it's one that is even transcends property taxes, right? I think one of the things that the legislature, because there's 35% of the every
2 years.
election every 2 years, the legislature turns over by 35%. So, and then you add term limits on top of it, which contributes to the turnover. Long-term planning is really hard with that much turnover and that kind of stuff. So, I always kind of used to look at it like this. It's kind of like somebody's drifting down a river towards the end of a waterfall. What the legislature does is we wait till they're at the end, and we try and pull the people out of the water, right? Versus ever going back and looking at what's actually causing them to fall in the first place, right? And so you think about other issues that we have. Childcare is one. We have a childcare issue, and how is that going to be solved? We have a housing issue. How is that going to be solved? And I'm not making excuses. I'm saying this is a fair criticism of the legislature, is we don't do this long-term planning. Another one is elder care. Our population is aging, and it's going to be very expensive, plus there's a quality of life issue involved. And are we doing enough to plan, and I brought this up before in front of this group, and several times, is what are we doing to plan for an aging population and the quality of life for an aging population? And again, when we're dealing with these acute issues right away that seem to be the person falling over the cliff right away, we're not taking time to go back and say, okay, what are we doing for 20 years from now and 30 years from now and 40 years from now? So I think it's a fair criticism of the legislature, and I would say it's probably transcends just property taxes.
I'm glad Dr. Card is in charge of the mic. We don't
Yeah.
have to worry about picking and choosing. Oh, be a little closer? Okay, thank you.
Hello. Okay,
Okay,
how's the
thank
South
you.
Dakota Investment Fund results and asset totals, and the director of that, how's his person's compensation and bonuses? And then what do you do with the reinvestment or distribution money if there's excess profits?
That's a very detailed question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one.
So I can speak to a little bit of that. He
right,
does
thank goodness.
he does a fantastic job. He is probably, if not the best, one of the very best investment people in the whole entire country. I was listening to the lieutenant governor and director of BFM who went to New York with, his name is Matt Clark, and he's fantastic, and he's a gem. He's a USD graduate, go Yotes. And when they went to the different stock exchanges and the different agencies that would give you a bond rating, the lieutenant governor and the director of BFM, Jim Twilligrew, who's also a USD graduate, said they thought they were talking to Michael Jordan. That's how big a star he is amongst those people that do this. His compensation, he gets a base compensation, and then he gets a bonus. I believe, it's a substantial percentage of performance. So there's a performance-based on how well the investment council does. And I believe at one time it was like 175% of his salary. We may have increased it, but it is substantial, but it is well deserved, and it is money that comes back off of what is realized in gains. So I would say it's money well spent, and we should be all very proud of our investment council here in South Dakota.
One of the things that I hear people talking about to replace the property tax is a transaction tax. I'm not sure exactly what that means, except that maybe means an increased sales tax. Do you have a different explanation of what a transaction tax is?
I see Representative Ring raised his hand and was ready to answer.
The idea in the proposal that's in the Secretary of State's office right now for a constitutional amendment has a proposal for what they call a retail transactions tax. In more than 50 years of studying taxation, I've never seen anybody who's an expert who's favorable toward a transactions tax. That's my first comment. The particular transactions tax that's proposed there is hands down the most unrealistic, cockamamie idea for a tax that I've seen in more than 50 years of studying taxes. So a transactions tax, originally, what a transactions tax really means is it's a tax on every transaction. So every time you buy or sell something, every time a business buys or sells something, they pay a tax. The advantage, and this is something that was proposed a lot by the Libertarian Party a few years ago. The advantage of that is that you need a low, you can use a low rate. The disadvantage is that you get all kinds of cascading of taxes. You get taxes on taxes on taxes, and that has all kinds of efficiency effects that you don't want me to go into here. So the idea of a transactions tax in this, I'll say it, expert's opinion, is that it's not a good idea. The one that's proposed for us to vote on, and I hope they don't get enough signatures, but the one that's proposed is an even worse idea. What'd you say, Ralph?
Well, I suppose if it does get on the ballot, we know how Ray's going to vote. But I think one of the things that I would say that I think we need to think about when it comes to these particular proposals is a lot of this is kind of being pushed on and sold as you will have visitors that are then spending to offset individuals who are in South Dakota then spending, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to have Iowa citizens and Nebraska citizens. I would just say, and not just say, that we need to look at what the definition of a visitor is, or, because a lot of times it's not more than me going to Sioux Falls and I'm considered a visitor. So if we're going to say we're going to offset this by visitor spending, oftentimes the visitor is us. So just something to think about.
I've got the microphone. Am I hearable? Thank you. One other USD plug, if I may. The concept of the investment council came first from Robert Johnson, who some of you might remember, professor at the business school here at USD. And he is in most ways the father of the investment council as we know it. And the first director was Steve Myers, another USD alum who established the operating systems that the investment council has used now for half a century, and is as you indicated, a nationally recognized successful government operation. So I think USD deserves a tremendous amount of credit for what that organization has accomplished.
Here, here.
So this is a pretty specific question, and I'm not sure how much most people know about it, but contractors' excise tax, I think we're still the only state in the union that has it. And I think that it's one of those taxes that, I mean, I would have a slap down with Ray Ring about the dumbest taxes. And I think it's one of those taxes that actually discourages economic development, because capital investment in South Dakota costs 102% of what it costs right across the state line in Minnesota. Any chance that we will ever get rid of it? Is there any, I mean, I know it brings in substantial revenue, and so we have that step back 10 paces and take a look at the whole, but you know, it just seems so incredibly self-defeating to me.
I would just say that I think I don't know that it necessarily, I can see where you're coming from as far as maybe that disincentivizes some developers or some contractors, right? I do think South Dakota offers in other ways, we are generally speaking a very low tax state in a lot of other ways, and offer for most part a pro-business climate, generally speaking, versus some of our neighbors to the east and south. So I can't speak to any details about that, but nobody's really ever, the Contractors Association and that vocal group has never, I've never heard them say that, hey, we don't like our tax, can we get rid of it? But that doesn't, it'd be concerning to get rid of it if you don't have a plan for replacement, given the situation that we're in budget-wise. I think that would be, at least something you'd want to consider before we start trimming that back. But I'm sure the contractors would appreciate it, as probably anybody else that pays taxes likes a decrease in their bill. But again, it's a balance, right? We have obligations and things, roads, bridges, vulnerable populations that are counting on state revenue, and so it's all a balancing act. But it's a great question.
I don't have any more to add.
I would like to ask both of you, what are your priorities this session, and what would you like to see get done by March 15th or whatever the last day is?
Go ahead.
You can go first.
Yeah, I kind of said in the opening, Leslie, that I think we're going to have a lot of work in appropriations. I think there's going to be a lot of balancing. I think there's going to be a lot of proposals that come through that need to be really vetted. I have a couple of bills that I'm working on, but I'm not going to have a bill load like I had last time. I mean, it's unusual for a appropriator to have as many bills as I had last time. But one of them is just a very simple. Right now, when the Attorney General, again, these are very small things, but the Attorney General does the explanation on a ballot measure, it doesn't say whether the citizens put it on the ballot or whether the legislature did. And I think some people have actually said they actually care about that. So I think it's something very simple. And I did something last year with the fiscal note where we were using old data with regards to what was the food tax kind of thing proposal that was on the ballot. We were using data that was like 11 or 12 months old. So just continues that theme of, trying to get as much information to the voter when they're making these decisions as possible. The other thing that I'm dabbling in is the School Accountability Board. It was started in 2016 with the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and it basically makes sure that school districts are spending I don't think Dr. Alvey's here, but spending the appropriate amount of money, and they're not keeping too much in reserves and these kinds of things. Well, by the time it kind of started to get going, COVID hit and every school got a waiver. And now post-COVID, now we're starting to get back to normal operations. And for example, the Frederick School District was actually fined by the School Accountability Board for not having enough in reserves. And what ended up happening, it was either Frederick School District and the Miller School District, both of them were fined. One had to do with an insurance payment that came in, and they just didn't know when the insurance payment was going to come in. And so I don't necessarily think that we should, I think we should hold these schools accountable for this, and the teachers of, the superintendents do appreciate what's going on. I think we do need to hold people accountable, although what the purpose is to prevent these actions from happening again, right? So if this is, Miller's never been out of compliance before, they'll probably never be out of compliance again. I would like to change it so maybe there's a probationary period where if you prove in 3 years that you're not going to violate, these accountability measures, that maybe you just don't pay the fine, right? Just so you're accountable, and what we're trying to do is change the behavior. But again, those are smaller things. I think my main goal is to make sure that we're doing the best we can to evaluate what programs are in the budget, and if we are going to make cuts, which some have proposed that we do our due diligence on what those programs actually do, what the outcomes are of those programs, and what effect cutting would have. So really very diligent in making sure that those things happen. In the past, we have agency hearings, and some of them can be rather lengthy, some of them can be rather quick. But once we get down to if we're going to start looking at cutting a percentage of each agency or what we're going to cut, we need to do a deeper dive into what that is.
For me, I've got a couple healthcare-oriented bills. One deals with licensure compacts, recognizing licensure of certain professionals, that if you have a physician assistant license in Nebraska, that we recognize it here in South Dakota. And part of that, those compacts all have to agree to certain stipulations, and so that everybody is agreeing to the same standards. Those are great for areas like us in a tri-state area, helps with workforce and decrease costs for the providers or the applicants, the licensees themselves. So, and I know this for myself personally, I also hold a CRNA license in Iowa and Nebraska, and I have to pay the Iowa license fee and the Nebraska fee and all in my South Dakota fee. And so licensure compacts aren't anything new to healthcare, but you still have to update them, and I think that's something that would be helpful. It's something small. We also don't do any special taxing on, or no sin taxing on vape products. And so that's been something, when we look at prevention and education for something like that, usually a lot of that is funded off of tobacco tax dollars, and cigarettes are, the amount of smoking is going less and less, those numbers. And so, but yet we've seen a rise in vaping amongst kids and just the general public, and there's still harms, and it's not necessarily something that is healthy. And so I'm working on some bills to lay a groundwork for potentially, having some sort of fee or registration system so that we can maybe get some revenue off of those sales to help with prevention efforts when it comes to harmful things like smoking and vaping and things like that. So.
Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me? Yeah, now it's working. Okay. So, nobody has mentioned that the governor has proposed no inflationary adjustment for the big three, who probably make up as large a proportion of your constituency as almost anybody else except for the representatives from here. I was just wondering if you have any second thoughts about your votes to cut the sales tax rate a few years ago.
I mean, I don't know that I have any regrets. I think that I think that there was three proposals that year to cut taxes. One of them was the food tax proposal that came up. There was a reduction in the overall sales tax, and then there was a smaller property tax reduction, and so this was the one that was favored by the majority of the legislature. But I will say that I think it's like 53 million in new ongoing revenue, and due to some things with the FMAP and due to some things with changes in SNAP and staffing of the women's prison, that $50 million was essentially done without any, it's already basically spoken for. So I don't know that there's anything going to be done this year as far as inflationary increases. I think it would have to really see in the next 2 months big indicators of the economy and sales tax increasing in order to push our budget projections higher. So it was interesting. I mean, it was very I knew it was coming, but to hear it was tough.
Yeah, that debate several years ago was an interesting one. I was serving in the Senate at the time, and the Senate really wanted property tax relief, but the negotiations with the House didn't necessarily go that way. And, some of the compromise was that there was a sunset put in place on that tax holiday. So we shall see what happens in the future about that, but where the 0% increase is concerning. And we are a state, a low tax, low service state, but, and a lot of folks want to say you should run it like a business. And I don't know how sustainable any business is, not being able to, give their employees a raise. Or to me, if I was a business owner, I would be thinking that maybe we need to look at what should we be doing different? What should we be looking toward the future? Because we're not going to be able to sustain 0% increases for very long. So it's certainly concerning, and I hope that some of our legislative colleagues are as concerned as we all are, because like you said, we have a lot of state employees in this legislative district, as a lot of university towns do too, and we'll continue. I don't know that, I think to provide a 1% increase would be $30 million.
$25 million.
$25 million in the ongoing budget, and it's just not there. And so we could trim out, you can always find efficiencies, right, in a lot of budgets. So I think we all can. I could look at that in my own home budget, right? But would it amount to $25 million without seriously jeopardizing other essential services? Hard times. We've got to keep moving forward.
Thank you. So, as you guys, I'm sure, are very well aware, the Clay County residents that you represent, about 25% of them live at or below the poverty line. Close to a third of them qualify for SNAP services. I can tell you that, we are down at the CCC are really being inundated. This week has been insane. If you would have come down there last night, you wouldn't have been able to get in the door for 2 full hours. The line never shortened the entire time. They stayed open late. People are really struggling. We're in an affordability crisis. I think we're all seeing that. The cost of housing, especially for our renters, is very high in this community. And people are really getting to the point where they don't know what to do. Senator Davis, I know you've decided to pursue this SNAP restriction. You and I have spoken about this. I'm very against it. All of the studies show that it does not increase health. It's going to cost our retailers millions of dollars, especially our small retailers, our small grocers that are in our food deserts. I don't think it's going to be effective. But what I would like to know is, what are you guys going to do for your constituents who are struggling? They are voters and they are taxpayers as well. And in fact, they pay a much higher portion of their income to our taxes than anyone else. What legislation are you going to bring to help them during this time?
Might have to get back to you on that one, as I don't think there's any single bill or legislative effort that is going to fix the affordability problem. We see that all across the country. That's what everyone is talking about. Gas prices are getting quite a bit better. So that is a positive. When we look at, I would say some of the most simple things we can do as a low-tax state with limited revenue options is look at growing the tax base. But some of our legislative colleagues don't necessarily believe in that or think that the government should be involved in that. And so it is challenging, because how do we continue to meet the state's obligations when it comes to taking care of vulnerable people who are impoverished, disabled, and needy? And I wish I had the perfect bill. Sad reality is our legislature is very divided right now. And I don't know if it would pass even if it was the perfect bill that would solve all the problems, because our legislature is very divided. So I know that's not a detailed answer, and I understand you're upset, but I'm doing the best we can with what we have.
Yeah, I think I think as the legislature and as somebody who's served now for this going into my 4th session, the best thing you can do, and I think what I looked for in a legislator, and I see several in this room before me, and what I'll look for in a legislator after me is somebody that looks at each individual bill. If there was a silver bullet, somebody would have done it, right? And so, but looks at every bill and looks through the eyes of all their different constituencies. I mean, yes, there's different constituencies throughout Vermillion. There's a constituency at Elk Point. There's some different things going on that North Sioux has needs, right? And there's things that are going on throughout our district. You look through the lens of all. You look through the lens of all the different citizens and all the different perspectives that we have. We gather as much input as we possibly can, and we contemplate to make the very best decisions we possibly can. I don't think a particular one bill is going to fix the issues that you're talking about. I don't know that 5 bills are going to fix the particular issues you're talking about. It's keeping things top of mind and doing the best thing you can do to contemplate the bills that are in front of you, and keeping in mind that, we represent District 17, and just as you said, all the folks that are in District 17, and that includes everybody in here, everybody that you mentioned, like I said, everybody in Elk Point that we talked to this morning, everybody in North Sioux that we talked to last night, the people that we talked to on a regular basis. So it's just trying to do the very best we can to represent an entire 25,000-ish people. So I appreciate the question.
I hate to cut it off, there are more questions, but we are out of time. Would you be willing to
Absolutely.
hang out if other people
Yeah.
want to ask a direct question? Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Be
you
here.
have an opportunity, they're here, you can still ask questions and come and visit with them. But for the meantime, we'll have to let everybody go back to their lives. So